We have a guest in the studio, and this is the Principal Secretary in the State Department for Culture and Heritage, and the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, Heritage, and what else, Madam PS?
Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Heritage.
That's it. It was Wildlife and Heritage.
Wildlife.
Yes. The Ministry of Wildlife, Tourism, Wildlife and Heritage has a State Department now for Culture and Heritage. And the PS is Ummi Bashir. She's in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you.
Asante sana for joining us and occupying the hot seat of the Situation Room this morning. So karibu sana. City has the day's proverb to welcome you into the show.
Our proverbs for the whole of this week are from the country of Guinea.
Guinea.
Not Equatorial Guinea, nor Guinea-Bissau. Guinea.
No, your guy is down south.
Not
Papua
my
New
relative
Guinea.
in Papua New Guinea, not those ones either. This is just Guinea.
Okay.
All right? To make preparations does not spoil a trip.
To make preparations does not spoil
A trip.
a trip. P.S. What do you make of this proverb?
I guess organizing yourself put you in a better position to be prepared for your endeavor. So always be prepared for whatever stake you want to take.
Makes sense?
Perfect sense.
Perfect sense.
Yes.
Is it? Always be ready. I mean, preparation doesn't take away anything
Yes.
from what you're preparing for.
If anything, it enhances and it ensures that whatever it is you want to do
Yeah.
is done exactly as you wished it to be. Yes.
P.S. Bashir, what is the job that you have in the State Department for Culture and Heritage?
Okay, first, thank you so much for having me in the studio this morning. The Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Heritage is the utmost pillar of tourism in our country. So for tourism to be successful, we need certain products. For instance, where I am, Culture and Heritage, we have the products of now the museums, we have our cultural artifacts and assets. Then we have wildlife, which of course is about the bush, and tourists are attracted to that. Then we have the beaches. So tourism cannot be in existence without the two products, which is basically wildlife and heritage. Yeah. And so in my State Department, basically deals with day-to-day protection and preservation of our cultures and our indigenous knowledge, tangible or intangible. So under the Constitution, Article 11, our cultures, what I deal with is basically cultures of our country, and our cultures are termed as the most vital, the binding factor of our country. So mine is to ensure that our artifacts are safe, our products are protected, and they are in such a position that local tourists and foreign tourists both enjoy and have an impeccable time with these resources that we have as a country.
You know, whenever we talk about culture and heritage, I mean, there are very many things that could come to mind. I'm not sure if all of them are part of culture and heritage. We talk about the music, we talk about our foods, we talk about our dressing, we talk about even the way we told our stories and the stories that are there, you know, the stories that are being told by each and every community. Are all these part of what we consider culture and heritage, including even the arts and the artifacts that we have? Is that all it?
You know, initially it was arts and culture before this regime. So the current executive order, the first executive order, when we came in, separated culture from arts. So we were in sports, and now we moved to tourism. So we are under the arm of tourism. So arts remained with sports. So it's youth and arts, State Department of Youth and Arts. So anything library, anything film, the Kenya Cultural Center, theatre remained with arts. But you see, in culture, there are wall arts. We have wall arts in Kisii. We have wall arts in caves in this country.
Yeah.
And culture now deals with basically our cuisines, our dances, our cultural dances. You see people dancing when when we have visitors in this country, and we have our storytelling culture in this country, where our great grandfathers or even our grandfathers used to sit us down and tell us the stories. And we have heritage. Heritage is now our historic sites, from Fort Jesus, Lamu, all the way to Western. And we have cultures, different cultures. Like the other day, I was in Rusinga. They had this festival late last year, the Rusinga Festival, where there's boat racing, and it's really exciting. We have the bullfighting, festival. These are some of the cultures that are there inculcated in our country. And arts and culture go hand in hand always. We cannot, for us to express our cultures, we need arts. We need arts to be part and parcel of our journey as culture. So, but we still work together. We're one government, and one way or another, we're always in the same room with arts.
Obviously, as you talk about some of these things, the preservation of culture then is important. It's interesting to see then what would the department be doing? What kind of activities would you be entering into that looks at the preservation of these cultures, so that 100 years from now, how many ever years from now, it's something that will be, essentially cast in stone that belongs to Kenya?
So we have what we call the Dodi project. It's basically the documentation of our cultural assets. We call it the indigenous knowledge documentation and digitization of our cultures. So for us to have the presence and the existence of our indigenous knowledge and our herbal medical regimes, what we have currently in place under a program called NPI is mingling with the counties, the grassroots level people of this country, and seeing how we can document these cultures. So what we do is currently we are going around the counties. We have 3 different phases of this program. It's called the Natural Products Industry under the National Museums of Kenya. So we realize that, you see, with time, our cultures are being eroded, and our, what we were brought up with, the kind of norms, the kind of understanding we had as kids. Basically, our kids are not, enjoying what we enjoyed back then. So because thanks to social media, everything is changing. So we saw it fit, that we need to safeguard our cultures, so that even 100 years from now, our grandkids who will be there will have an idea on our sorts of dances, our different drums, the isikuti, the danto of the Somalis. We have, different cuisines. We have, the Lamu cultures, so that it doesn't go with the wind.
Right.
Yeah.
So how are we preserving that? You're saying we're documenting and preserving it.
Yes.
What are we doing? Are we filming and storing?
Yes. So what we're doing is basically, we're currently implementing that project in 13 counties as phase 1. So we have 30 champions, youth champions in each county. So we hire these champions. Of course, we pay them a certain stipend, and we give them the tools needed to document this. We give them computers, we give them iPads, microphones. We give them the tools that are needed to record this. So they go deep into the villages, mingle with the elders, mingle with the elderly, and gather this materials that are needed. And some of these are basically what we call the mitishamba. How do we come up with a certain herb that heals a headache that heals. We have them turi, for instance, in Kilifi County. They're basically seeds that women take, and they don't get pregnant. They're somehow like a pill used that currently you can get from the supermarket, but now these women use. So when they want to get pregnant, they stop taking them turi. So, but when they don't want kids anymore for a certain period, they use it. So such things, and there are many. There is a tree that actually exudes foam. Like omo, like a parcel, so you just wash clothes. So such things, and documentation of this indigenous knowledge, we don't do it without the consent of the counties, without the users, the main,
community.
The community. So we are trying whatever we can to ensure that these cultures are not eroded. Our heritage seems to be dwindling. There are many sites that we have that, thanks to climate change, for instance, and the weather down in the coast, and for Jesus, for instance, we have constructed a buffer wall, which has a beautiful garden. You should go check it out. That we have constructed there. This is basically to safeguard our heritage, and on the other hand, to safeguard our cultures. We've come up with this indigenous knowledge bank.
Okay. Are you putting it in a museum somewhere? Like, for example, walk into a museum, maybe at the coast or any part of this country, and find them turi and a story around it, where you can see maybe leaves and branches of this tree, or even the seed itself, and then there's some content around it, either video content or audio content or even written content around it.
Yes. So basically, our intellectual assets as a country are important to us, and after documenting this and putting them in a digital platform, as I was saying, on computers, we put them. Our plan is to put them in museums, and for the end user to use a digitized means to interact with the end product. So we're not just putting and storing them at the county level. This will be put in a system that is accessible. If you walk into Fort Jesus, for instance, if you walk into NMK right here in Nairobi, for instance, so it's a product that will create joy to the person who wants to see, okay, what do the people of Kilifi have that is outstanding, matters, indigenous assets. Yeah, so basically what we're doing is digitizing. Then when you're in the comfort of your county, let's say, wherever you'll be visiting our museums, then you can just access the product.
Sure. We often talk about how, government operations would be aligned with education, for example. Some of the courses at the tertiary level have been ignored. There's a lot of focus and attention that is given to certain courses over others. And I see a direct relation here between the courses in the arts, between the courses in culture and preservation, and exactly what is being done at the department level. Imagine a situation whereby the preservation of culture that is being gotten into right now is then being led, or at least being contributed to, by those who've gone through a period of education and study in how to do it, in what it's about, and how they can add value to it. Do you think then that there would be more, or needs to be more, collaboration then between offices such as yourself, government as a whole, and the education sector, where unfortunately some of these courses are being dropped even at a university level?
Yeah. So, you see, culture cannot work in a shell. We cannot be an island and expect to safeguard our cultures as a country. So what we're currently doing is working with the ministry, the State Department of Education, and also the State Department of Social Protection, and programs that reach the children of this country. The storytelling initiatives that we used to have back in the day with our great-grandfathers are more or less being brought to the school setting level. CBC, for instance, you find children having artsy, what do you call it, hobbies, and also artsy talents. So for us, it is more about the future generation, the children of tomorrow, that don't mingle with our cultures, have a platform through this program that we have with the State Department of Education, where we have plays, we have storytelling, and same thing for social protection. So culture decided, okay, we are adults, we have, we have the youth, but the people who deserve more, to be educated more on culture are the children. Because what they see right now is they click on social media. They find kids as young as 8 on social media, as young as 7, and they have iPads and they interact with the Western world. And they don't have that, touch iPad thing, having our Kenyan culture story or our superheroes, and we have so many of them. So what we're trying to do is have a digital way that we can work together with education, social protection, to have a platform where our children can, access all these cultures and heritage and history that we have as a country.
The entire discussion around cultures guarantees that literally every community that we have in this country has something that they can be proud of, something that they live with and perhaps take for granted, but something which was passed down and which is of significance, and perhaps significant because maybe other parts of the country don't have it. For instance, someone like myself who grew up in Mombasa, you take the coral reefs for granted, but that's a heritage. You also take the beaches for granted. That's a heritage. We hear of the Kaya forest, you take it for granted. It's a heritage. The way people farm and the traditional foods that they grow, that's part of their heritage. Now comes my question. How do we ensure that individual communities in the counties that you speak of, one, understand this diversity and wealth of heritage that they actually have, and how it is that they, beyond the national government coming in, can also preserve, first of all, understand the value, appreciate it, then set into motion the process of ensuring that they conserve it, so that this passing down, because they found it, some of it is natural, so they found it. Now, their duty is to ensure that the generations that come after them have the same benefit that they did. Because one of the things we complain about is, especially for instance with our natural heritage like wildlife, that when there's poaching, the likelihood of future generations enjoying this gift that we actually found is minimized. How do you get counties to be able to understand, appreciate this, and to take that initial initiative to ensure that they play the role that you have introduced?
Okay. So we work with the county governments, all 47 of them. We have the COG, whereby we have committees, different committees, sports, whatnot, and we also have culture committee. So what we do is work from a top-down level, where now the county governments, the governor of that specific county now has and initiates cultural festivals in different counties. The CEC culture, and mostly it's tourism, culture, and different things, but usually there's always culture in every county. So they have their own different festivals, and we have what we call the Kenya Music and Cultural Festival that happens every year, and it is rotational. Last year we had it in Kitui County. This year we're going to have it in Makueni County. So there's a board that that works on that aspect of the festival. So what happens is there's competition between the counties. So you as Lamu County, you have your festival. You as Turkana County, you have your festival. Rusinga, there's the Rusinga festival. There is the racing of the camel derby. So different counties have different assets, cultures, and festivals. So what happens, this now comes to a certain county, and you compete. So the winner usually gets an award, be it trophies, and some are sometimes monetary. But what happens is what we're trying to do is encourage those festivals not to die. And what I'm trying to do for a change this year, given that it's my first year, is have the end one like a gala here in Nairobi, where we have ambassadors attending, where we have the head of state attending, and seeing these beautiful cultures that we have in the different 47 counties in this country. And for that, it will also be a plus for us in tourism. It will be a plus for us in appreciating our cultures. Because the other day I was with a nephew of mine, and I asked him, who's your role model? And he told me Jay-Z. Who's your mentor? Jay-Z. And I was wondering, okay, why? It's like, but he's cool.
Who's Jay-Z?
Okay.
It's a singer. So you see, it's what they see on social media.
The one for Beyond.
Beyond.
Yule ambaye anaimba na Beyond.
Beyond. Yeah, that one. So I want our children to appreciate our artists, our local artists, our local talents, our local actors. And for us to do that is to make that available for them. When they turn like this, they see a poster and a billboard of our local, superhero. They turn like this, they see our Mekatilili, and they wonder, who's this? Then you tell them the story. So that's what we're trying to do as a different thing in our museums and also as a State Department.
So you have various bodies under you, the Bomas of Kenya,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The National Museum of Kenya and the museums across the country. How many museums do we actually have in Kenya?
Oh my God. We have 25 museums and 30 heritage sites. So they're different.
So 25 museums and 30 heritage sites.
Yes.
What is the National Museum of Kenya? That's a museum.
That is a museum, and it's called the Nairobi National Museum.
Okay.
So we have the likes of Karen Blixen.
That's also a museum.
Yes. So mostly our client,
Gedi Ruins is a?
it's a prehistoric heritage site. Gede ruins, and we have the Kaya Forest. The Kaya Forest, actually, I was there the other day. We had the repatriation of Vigangos from America. And it was actually a big deal for us as a country because our stolen artifacts and our assets were being returned. The Vigangos are basically spiritual, identities of past or dead people within the communities who are in Kaya Kauma, where I had not even imagined such an occasion or a celebration could happen. And the cultures that we're talking about being eroded are not being eroded at that level. They're being eroded in the civilized digital counties. So the counties that, for instance, Kilifi, when you go deep into the Kaya forests, they still practice this, the rituals. So when we brought these 85 Vigangos to the community there, they were slaughtering goats, they were dancing, they were drinking the local brew there, and it was a big deal for them. Now imagine if they were that excited about artifacts which were stolen from our country many years ago. Shouldn't we be celebrating, as a country about that? It seems to have been lost. The message seems to have been lost somewhere, because when you forcefully take an asset of mine, something that I hold dear to my heart, and years after so much toil and so much, detail, they're brought back to the country. The people they were taken from were not the ones that are here right now. It's their fathers or forefathers, but it has some meaning, or they have some meaning to that particular community there. So it was a big deal for me, because it was actually my first time visiting Kaya Kauma. and people are passionate about their
And
cultures.
sing the
I'll tell you.
culture. These ones were from America. What's the story behind them?
So, Eric, what we're trying to do is make culture cool again. And we realized that we have to enhance the experience of our cultural interactions through our museums and also our cultural centers. And these assets and objects were stolen by colonialists before our independence. These go way back from the 1880s all through to even post-independence. And most of them were usually through religious conversions, where we as Africans, as Kenyans, were practicing, we're not practicing Christianity, basically. What we were practicing was traditional beliefs and spiritual beliefs, and our people had certain objects that we're using. And what happened is the missionaries told the Kenyans that, you don't need this. You need to move away from this. It's archaic. It's backward. You need to believe, this is the Bible. You need to go that way. So bring these artifacts, whatever spiritual and traditional objects that you have in your homes, and we will discard them for you. And what happened is that instead of discarding them, they ended up in museums and, homes in foreign countries. Another way is also through trade and tourism. So when during the prehistoric era, what happened is that trade, of course, was going on. There was barter trade, and some of artifacts ended up being loaded in ships and being taken abroad because there's no way this bulky artifacts can fit in your bag and you go through the airport. And there's also the belief that of Kenyans having a certain superpower. Back in 1968, when Naftali Temu won the first gold medal in the Olympics in Mexico, and people realized, wait a minute, maybe there is something that they're using back at home, so we need to get some of these things so that we can fly like them. Yeah, so that's one of them. And also military interventions where there was the pre-colonial era where our Kiticha Enzi, for instance, was taken. That was we also have
what is Kiticha Enzi?
Kiticha Enzi is seat that was used by the Witu kingdom back then in the 1800s, and Kiticha Enzi is symbol of leadership.
So like
the
a throne.
King, yes, the throne. So the king sits on the seat, and they thought this is the best way to punish these people, so let us take this seat. So it was very emotional for the people of the Witu kingdom, which is basically the Pate Island side right now. And
most people have no idea where Witu is. Start with Lamu County.
oh, sorry.
Yes, and then
Go to Party Island.
Go to Party Island.
Yeah. So the Witu kingdom. So they took the Kiticha Enzi and also the sacred drum of the Pokomo. And, there was also it's called, I think, the Ngadzi. So this is a drum that was used by the Pokomo community to, practice their sacred and traditional beliefs and, the rituals within their community. So when you rip this out of the community and take it with you to your country, sometimes they're kept in their homes, and then eventually, as time goes, they're taken to the museums of that particular country and schools. So there's what we call the Witchcraft Act of 1925, which basically came about because they believed that our herbs, our cultural practices were more of our witchcraft spectrum and not a normal day-to-day belief. So
basically dehumanizing us.
Actually,
and saying stop practicing this. This is witchcraft.
Actually, if you look at the colonial mind and the tools that they used, these are all very deliberate. Every artifact that Madam Bashir has mentioned was a symbol of unity for the people.
Yeah.
Now, when you remove aspects the thread that more or less weaves that community together, the community then disintegrates easily, and it's easier to conquer them. And it's also easier to replace the systems of belief that they had with your own. But you have to remove theirs. And the symbols are key to it. And that is perhaps the reason why you'll find traditional leaders in any colonial setup where the Europeans were, they brought their own leadership. That's where the chief came in. Traditional African communities and other communities around the world had their own ways of going about understanding leadership, but they brought in theirs. Look at the Americans and how they dealt with the Native American. You will understand. They strip you of the very essence of what gives you meaning in your life. And then, when you're left floundering, they then can easily introduce theirs. Look at the penal colony that Australia was, and what it is that they did to the natives of that particular country, or New Zealand for that matter, or anywhere for that matter where they went. It was the same thing. They ensure that any artifact, anything that is a symbol of unity, whether it's a form of leadership, they erode it, corrupt it, or take it away.
What gives you identity?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is what they take away.
They take it away.
Now, how do we get them back? Do we have to have a law in Kenya that says we are forcing everybody who took our things to return, or do we have to go to a global court?
Eric, there's this kingdom that was called the Chitembwe and Lumboka kingdom back in the day. And some of these artifacts that I'm talking about were basically taken away as punitive measures to punish you for, objecting our colonial regime and rule. So when you punish me and you take the most important things to me as a community, I tend to bend and oblige. As a country, what we have been trying to do is get these assets back. There are many museums that have our artifacts. We had an inventory in place, an international inventories project that we had some time back with the help of the German government here in Kenya. And this project was spearheaded by brilliant researchers and scientists here in Kenya. And we came to find out that we have close to 32,501 artifacts that are out there in different museums in 7 countries and also almost 30 institutions. So we asked ourselves, how do we get this back? You see, Eric and team, there's always that there are laws of the land. You cannot just go into their museums and remove these artifacts and come with them. Other countries, for instance, the museums in America, the ones that returned the Vigangos, did that because of diplomatic relations and diplomatic conversations that have been going on for a very long time. Others are still holding on to our assets in their museums, some displayed and others not displayed, because of the laws of the land. For instance, the British Museum Act of 1964 is a hindrance to the repatriation and restitution of our artifacts. And unless that act is repealed and unless that act is changed, there's nothing we can do.
What does it say?
It says that whatever is in the possession, whatever artifacts and assets that are in the possession of the British Museum belongs to them. So whether they took it from you or not, it doesn't matter.
What?
So what we're trying to do is get it repealed by using the MPs that are there, the Black Caucus MPs in the parliament, to see how we can, get them back and repeal this act. That aside, the other day I was in Britain and we're trying to get some documents from their archives. And we saw many things that had been erased or covered to make it look like the British were not actually, did not do certain things prehistorically in Kenya, and we asked to have this documentation back. But you see, their laws don't allow that, and it can only be done from 100 years from the day that they were taken from Kenya. So by the time you hold me culpable, I'm long gone. By the time you get who was behind it or whose name has been erased, because that's what's happening, they're blocking out the names and
Redacted.
Yeah, basically reduction. So but you see, at the end of it, all is not lost, because what we have as a country is strong diplomatic relations with the British, with the Americans. So through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and also Diaspora Affairs, what we're trying to do is have a sitting on the table. Eric, we also have the 1970 UNESCO Convention on means of prohibiting and preventing the illicit import and export of cultural ownership, transfer of cultural ownership and property. As a country, we have never ratified this convention. So we keep talking
Since
about 1970. So as a country, we keep talking about restitution and repatriation and whatnot. But you see, if you haven't ratified a certain United Nations UNESCO convention that deals with that
power.
specific, and gives you a seat at the table, then what are we talking about? So as Kenya, right now as we speak, about a week ago we were in Parliament pushing for that pass for ratification. The process, we get a certificate, and that is done in France and UNESCO. So that will be a great thing for us as a country, because after that, then we start working on the legal and policy framework on how to implement that.
But then, most of these countries that we're talking about are members of UNESCO, are they not?
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
they have ratified this particular convention in their own countries.
Yes.
And UNESCO pushes for the preservation of cultures wherever they are. Now, can't UNESCO itself be in the forefront of saying, all right, everybody, you stole, you return? You have
I wish it
something
was that
you know
easy,
very
Eric.
well that this one does not belong to you, or we are preserving cultures. If this is the culture of a certain community in Kenya, please let us preserve it in Kenya and not anywhere else.
Ask yourself the question, Eric, when these conventions are written, or the structures that we use to form these conventions, the voices that lead in the formation of these conventions, are they our voices, or are they the voices
Whose voice are
precisely?
they? Right?
And so if you know the voices, then you'll understand whose interests will be taken care of before others. See, ours then doesn't become a primary interest. For instance, if you look at the United Nations, the UNESCO's World Heritage Sites, okay? Italy is said to have some of the most, in fact, probably the most in the world. When you talk of heritage sites, you need to go to Egypt because the pyramids stand out. But we have very many historical sites on this continent and even in this country. But please go
For
ahead.
instance, Eric, Kenya is the cradle of humankind. And the Turkana boy was found in Turkana many, many millions of years ago. And we have this notion that civilization and development came from the Western world. But if the first human, the closest
Upright human being.
upright was found in our country, in our continent, then I think it's about time we had, we changed that narrative of we are backward and, we are not smart enough. But it's a good thing to take into note and capitalize on the fact that we're the cradle of humankind. We are the cradle. There's nothing more civilization than the Mesopotamia irrigation scheme that happened long before others came even to know what that means. There's nothing as impeccable as the pyramids that we have in Egypt. And as a country, once we ratify this convention, I think we will have a seat at the table, and we will be at a certain position where our voices will basically be heard. When people talk for you on a table that you're not part of, it becomes, it becomes nerve-wracking when you cannot have your say. But when you have a seat at that table, you get everything done that you need.
Piers, I have to ask you, you spoke earlier about storytelling. And here I'm looking at, it is not necessarily anymore how the story is being told. It is who is telling the story. If we tell our own stories, because the people who know about these cultures, the people who know about these events have passed down that information through the art of oral tradition. There are people who have a wealth of knowledge and information in their minds. I would say one of the problems is that we do not write it down. It is not captured in history. The people who stole, and I say stole because that's what they did, the Americas, the Britons, who stole things from here, still went ahead to document things that they have resident in their own countries. So you can walk into a museum, you can walk into a library, and you can read it. We don't. And I think that may be one of the problems that we have. We don't put it down.
It's true.
When would we be able to see a situation where this stuff is
Museums,
put down?
yeah, thank you for that. You see, museums such as the Pitt Rivers Museum in the UK are willing to give us back these artifacts. I had a meeting with one of the directors in my office yesterday, telling us there's like 9,000 artifacts in our stores that we have not displayed. So they want that opportunity and engagement to be given a platform to return. Two, there's our tour guides in our museums who tell you the story of how the Kayas came about, of how, Fort Jesus came about. But they're myths and legends, and they keep changing with time. So you can come and I tell you, genies live here to make it exciting. But then you come, another tour guide is there, and things keep changing. So what we're trying to do...
The genie lives in the Mbuyu. Now, which part of the Mbuyu?
The one under the tree.
That one. The right one or the left one? That one. So the myths and legends are there. So what we're trying to do is have that data and train our tour guides so that they can tell a standardized story. And the end user will not be confused. So by creating an experience in our national museums, getting this data, and we have data all over our museums, but you see they're in such an archaic way. There's such a boring, documentation that even the youth cannot relate to. So what we're trying to do is make culture cool again. And how are we going to make culture cool again? We're going to make culture cool again by having an interactive vibe with the youth of this country, be it through social media, digital platforms, be it through innovative means by involving, our local artists to visit our sites and make them cool again. By having, by having, by having a digital means, that an app that you can click, pay some amount through the app, visit our museums without even going there.
Virtually,
because we're going digital. And when you go to a museum like NMK, you want to relate to that heritage. You want to relate to that culture. So what we're trying to do is digitize everything. Come up with audio visual, touch, texts that read out to you. If you're Spanish, we have that different dialect. We have different languages. If you're French, and for us, it'll rake in more revenue. So for me, I also want to mention the Sanaa online shopping mall. This is a massive, massive win for us as a culture department, because we have realized that our e-commerce platforms there are many e-commerce platforms in this country, but ones that sell these carvings that we have, the Kamba carvings, the Kisi soapstone, and the brilliant Lamu kofias that we have. So I come as a tourist, I want to buy that particular carving, but it's too bulky. I'm here, but I have to pay extra money for that weight when I'm checking in. So what do? I sit in the comfort of my home in America. By the click of a button, you automatically buy that particular Lamu kofia that you want at a price that you don't have to pay for the tickets. You don't have to come and stay in a hotel. You don't have to come that extra mile, but it is right there in your
So I'm shopping online.
Yeah, basically it's an e-commerce mall. So you have...
And who is the vendor on the other end?
Now that is what we're working on. We're trying to have what we call stakeholder engagements with the end users and with the parties that are part and parcel of the story. We have what we call public participation going on, some sort of extensive stakeholder engagement, where we now have that. The public now, the sellers from this end, and the users from this end can sit down and say, look, I'm going to make a certain percentage out of this. We eradicate the middlemen. We eradicate the people in the middle who take more money than me, who has used my hands and my talent and skill by production. So I have done a certain art, and I have value addition done. And for instance, the Lamu kofias, the women there take almost 6 months to sew one kofia, and these kofias are sold like 45 to 50,000 here in Nairobi, but the lady who did it in Lamu gets 3,000 to 5,000 tops Kenya shillings. All that goes into the middlemen.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to change is that eradicate middlemen, have value addition done, so that we can even export these beautiful products we have as a country.
That's a good platform. City.
In 1 minute.
And
Can we start cultural clubs in schools, beginning with primary schools and secondary schools, and even introduce it at university level?
City, that's a brilliant idea. And we'll definitely take that into account. Thank you for that. Cultural schools, just like we had the wildlife clubs, that would be
journalism
brilliant.
club, wildlife club.
And that would make culture cool again, definitely.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us today. It's coming up to the top of the hour, 8 a.m. Our friend Dennis Aseto hasn't made it because, news is happening out there. Today is Maandamano Day. I've got to ask you this question. I mean, this is government. Maandamano, there's all this talk about, what's happening in the country. Is the government hearing what we're saying? Is the opposition being too radical? What's your view on this?
Well, Eric, I'd like to just say that, blood was shed in this country by our forefathers in the fight for our independence. And right now, it's about time jasho imwagwe kuhakikisha ya kuwa tunajenga taifa letu. And that's all I have to say about this topic.
Jasho imwagwe kuhakikisha kuwa tunajenga taifa letu. So tumwage jasho wapi, kwa maandamano ama?
No.
Wacha uamuzi ni wako.
Oh.
And that's all.
Tafakari.
Chaguo la mtangazaji.
Ummi Bashir, Principal Secretary in the State Department for Culture and Heritage in the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Culture, has been our guest this morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.